Hi guys, my name is Amit Sarkar and welcome to this presentation. The talk will be about Tycho, which was created by ThoughtWorks and contributors. It's an open source project and the entire code is available on GitHub, so feel free to contribute and look at the code base. Um, First of all, I want to thank Rudolph for helping me present in this meetup. So thank you, Agile Test Automation Meetup Vienna. It's a great opportunity for me. I also want to thank Team Tycho, and let's move on. Because I know it's short of time, I want to give some demo as well. So I'll quickly go through the things. First of all, Tycho is used for browser automation, but in browser automation you can do a lot of things, and Tycho focuses on end-to-end browser test. So what are actually end-to-end browser tests? So the Martin Fowler says that user journey tests are form of business-facing tests designed to simulate a typical user's journey through the system. So essentially, what we are looking at is a user going to a website, interacting with the website, and then performing some activities, and then moving away from the website. So essentially, that's a user journey. What are the challenges currently when we actually try to automate this user journey? First of all, it takes a long time to execute because you have to find different identifiers. You have to make sure that the you have different browser compatibility tests and other things. So it takes a lot of time to execute. The second challenge is it's not part of development lifecycle. Developers are not sometimes focused on the end-to-end journey. They are focused on what's there on the screen and how it's interacting and how it's functioning. The other thing is flakiness. So flakiness happens because a lot of the identifiers that we use in our testing keeps changing because of some development changes. So it means that if you use a XPath or a CSS path, then what happens is if the identifier changes, then your test would fail. And the last challenge is it's tough to read or modify because there is a lot of coding involved in actual automation. For a simple manual tester, it's actually quite difficult to get on board and start automating. But but in the end, what's the goal? The goal is to simulate a real user scenario from start to finish. Now, what is Tycho? Tycho is a free and open source browser automation tool built by ThoughtWorks. It actually means a Japanese barrel shaped drum. The reason is Taiko was actually inspired by Puppeteer, and in Japan they use these taiko drums in puppet shows. So that's what inspired the name Taiko. It also was inspired by a Python program called Helium, and this is a small demo of what Helium is trying to do. So as you can see, it's trying to open Chrome and go to a particular URL, and then you can see the code on the side. Um, it's trying to write some text into the username field and other text into the password field, and then it clicks on sign in. So this actually inspired Tycho, and let's quickly go and see what Tycho does. So Tycho is essentially doing the same thing what Helium was doing, using some code from Puppeteer. So as you can see, simple commands: open browser, go to google.com, write gauge, press enter, click a particular text. We are not telling click an X path, click a CSS path. It's pretty straightforward, and in the end, it you can generate the code of whatever you have written on the screen quite quickly. So Tycho. Now, what is actually Tycho and how do you actually use it? So, it's a simple Node.js library. So, it means that you can actually use npm to install it on your machine and then start automating as soon as possible. And because it's a JavaScript library, it works in the browser very well. Of course, it doesn't support other languages, but I'll get to it in the later part of the presentation. Um, So it uses the Chrome DevTools protocol API and is built, which is built ground up to test modern web application. So it's by default Tycho comes with Chromium, but you can use Edge, Chrome, or the nightly version of Firefox, Brave, Vivaldi, and other browsers, which are again Chromium based. It also comes with different plugins for accessibility. If you want to run a test on a browser inside an Android device, then you can use a plugin called Tycho Android. You can do some performance checks with the diagnostics. You can cast and record a GIF video for your script run, and you can also interact with different storages for Docker containers. Now, some of the key features of Tycho in comparison to other what do you say tools. So it uses something called smart selectors. So it means you write test scripts by looking at a web page without inspecting its source code. So you don't have to look at an HTML code in order to start automating. It has implicit weights, so you can actually define global weights if you want, but by default it will wait for the element to load before it interacts with it. So you don't have to define weights now and then. And the interactive recorder. So as you saw in the GIF video, that you can actually write a code and see what's happening inside the browser. So in the demo, I will show you what it is, because I think this is the key feature of Tycho. Even before you run your entire code, you can actually check what each line of code is doing inside the browser. And then you can also do request and response stubbing. So you can intercept a request and you can redirect, you can stub it. So you can do all those things. Now, why JavaScript? So why does Tycho support JavaScript and not any other languages? Well, currently in browser automation, you have different tools using different languages: Java, Python, Ruby, and other languages. And lot of new automation tools are beginning to use JavaScript because it's already inside the browser. So you don't have to learn a new language. Most of the frameworks are now created in JavaScript. The front end frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, they are all JavaScript based. Plus the Chrome Dev Tools protocol, it's really good, and there are a lot of now Chromium based browsers on which you can do the testing. Now coming back to what a test framework with Tycho and what it would look like. So suppose you want to use Tycho in your organization for automating a particular website inside a browser. What would the test framework look like? So the programming language would be the JavaScript or TypeScript. You would use some test runner, Gauge, Mocha, Jest, or any other test runner. And then you would use the Node.js library, Tycho, and because it's part of the npm ecosystem, you can actually use Tycho with any other npm library. The protocol will be the DevTools protocol, and you can interact with Chromium, Chrome, Edge, Opera, Brave, Vivaldi, any of the browsers. Uh, Currently, Firefox is also there, but it's in the nightly stage. And then you wherever Node runs, you can run Tycho. So essentially, you can run it on Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Jenkins, Docker, Raspberry Pi, Android. So wherever you can run Node, you can run Tycho. Um, so tool comparison. So how does Tycho compare with other browser automation tools? So as I mentioned, I mean there are a lot of tools in the market: Selenium, WebDriver, TestCafe, Cypress, Puppeteer. Microsoft is coming with Playwright. We have a sponsor, TestIm, and they have an AI-based automation tool. So there are plenty of tools in the market, and the Tycho team from ThoughtWorks, they actually did some analysis, and these were the results. So in terms of maintenance, reliability of weight mechanisms, Tycho is doing well. Performance also, it's reasonably well, but Puppeteer actually trumps everyone. Cross-browser support, WebDriver in Selenium is still the leading, and in also in terms of languages in which you can code your automation. Test failure analysis, Cypress. Which was a we had a very good talk by Sylvia, and Cypress actually leads. Tycho is not too far behind, and then framework integration is very good with Selenium because Selenium has been there for a long time, and Puppeteer and Tycho again Node.js libraries, so it's quite good. And then you have all these competitions. So you have Selenium, IO, Cypress, Puppeteer, Codecept. This is Nightwatch, Backstop, Test Cafe, Protractor, Playwright, Test Project. So there are so many tools in the market, and everyone is trying to do automation in a very different way. Um, Limitations to Tycho. Uh, so it doesn't support C Sharp, Java, Python, or Ruby. It currently doesn't support Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox. There is limited support. It's in experimental phase now. So they are currently trying to provide support for the nightly build for Firefox. And the good thing is because Internet Explorer is now being put out of service by Microsoft, we don't have to then in the future automate Internet Explorer. And of course, iOS is not supported. Mac OS is supported because you can try to run Chrome inside Mac OS and then automate using the browser, but iOS is not supported. So now let me go to the demo. So I am opening Visual Studio Code here, and I will type Tycho. I've already installed Tycho. So in order to install Tycho, you just type npm install global Tycho and it will install. But since I've already installed it, I'll just quickly go. So I start Tycho, and Tycho opens, and then I type open browser. And in this case, I've made sure that the default browser is Edge for Tycho, as you can see, and you can define that using environment variables. Then I'll say go to google.com, and so it went there, it automatically waited, it said pass, and then say write uh, Tycho. So it identified there is a text box, and it did that. Now I will say press enter. So this is the enter key. So you are not telling it to press a particular button. You are just saying press the enter key on your keyboard. So it pressed the enter key, and voila, you have a list of search results. And then if you want to code, so all these commands that you have now used, you want to put in a JavaScript code, you just type dot code, and it will give you the entire JavaScript code, and then you can dot exit, and it closes the browser. So in a very in a very short time, I've shown you how to automate a simple user scenario using Tycho. And I think for me, when I started using this tool, the clear advantage was using the tool in a REPL mode, because I can see what I'm doing and what the automation tool is trying to do for each line of code, and it's quite powerful. I have also written some other scripts. So in this case, I've written a script for bt.com, and I'll quickly show you. It's pretty straightforward. Open a browser in headless mode false. So by default, Tycho will open the browser in headless mode, but here I'm saying don't open it in headless. Go to BT, click OK, click broadband, click fiber broadband, click this, click that, and it's essentially a simple English language. And if I want to execute this code, so I'm already here, so I'll just say Tycho, and I will type the command, and then let's see what happens. So it opened bt.com. The other good thing about Tycho is it doesn't care whether it's an iframe or anything. It identifies text, what is visible to a user. So anything that is visible to a user, you can interact with it. So it works predominantly in that way. So you can work if even if there is an iframe, it can work. You can open tabs, you can close tabs, so it can do all those things. You can interact with tables, you can do all sorts of things. And here I'm trying to wait for the page to load. I will, I think I'll get an error somewhere here. Yeah, it's not found something. Okay, so it should ideally go down. Yeah, it went down. Click add and continue. Should type the postcode. Okay, yes, it's a bit slow. Click check availability. Yeah, click 55 Eden Road. Click confirm address. And it takes a screenshots and saves it. So here is a screenshot of the page, and as I was showing you, the code is pretty readable and very easy to start, especially because it's all plain text and you can see what you're doing. um, so yes, this is Tycho. uh, Let me go back to the presentation. So conclusion, it's a Node.js library. It uses Chrome DevTools protocol. It automates tests quickly by using smart selectors. So as you saw, I didn't have to tell Tycho that click this particular element using XPath or CSS. It reduces flakiness by handling weights. So you saw the bt.com script, and you saw that I never defined weights anywhere. Let me quickly show you again. So nowhere I'm defining wait for this much time, wait for that much time. It comes with an interactive REPL, so you can see what you're doing, and you can quickly modify your code if something doesn't work. And it's completely open source. um, and these are the main URLs. So you have the tyco.dev website, then you have their GitHub page, you have the Spectrum, so that's for asking questions to the team, then you have the documentation, and you have a Twitter channel. So yeah, I just made this presentation again using JavaScript. And thank you. So that's my website, and feel free to check it out. And yeah, I'm done with the presentation. So it's short and sweet. Thank you.
Taram, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Rudolph.
Yes. Okay. Amit, thank you. Also, we have some questions from MP. Yeah. It seems to be that Tycho is a great tool. Why it is not supported or advertisement from the community like Cypress or Playwright?
Because it's an open source tool, so there is no advertisement, so it has to go via its own through community only. But we also have Zabil from ThoughtWorks. And Zabil, would you like to share a few comments? I mean, Zabil is the product owner who is working on the project Tycho.
Awesome. Then, please, can you answer this question?
Yeah, so hi there. So we built Tycho for our projects in ThoughtWorks to overcome most of the problems that we face, even using the newer tools like Cypress, etc. So we are not very, uh, you know, on the advertisement front or anything. It's a tool that we built for our projects to go faster, to write tests faster.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and uh, and we've incidentally open sourced it so that the community can benefit. from it. Now, if you look at ThoughtWorks history, we've also built other famous automation tools like Selenium and a lot of things in the testing uh, um, space. And they also took time. If you look at Selenium, started off very small, and Tycho is just a tool that is less than a year old. Um, uh, Despite that, it's been quite popular. If you look at the GitHub page, you can and be with a community. You can see the number of questions coming in each day uh, in the community. Uh,
Mhm.
but our focus is to build a very stable, non-flaky testing tool. So we do not do much. We are not into much of advertising or increasing our user base, etc. We are in it for the long run.
Okay, so that sounds for me like that if we take a look at Selenium and it is from Southwark, this was also because you introduce them for yourself and then make it
Yes.
open source. For me, the same for Tycho. That means the Tycho is the next Selenium.
Uh, I mean, Selenium has its own space, like things like cross-browser testing, using it to other language and all. But we did take a lot of our learnings from Selenium, and we're trying to solve other problems with it. So I wouldn't say it's a replacement of Selenium. Selenium is a great tool even now. It's just that there are other problems we are trying to solve with it.
Okay. So the next question, are there dashboards for result review in CI?
So, yeah, I mean, this gets asked quite a lot. So, Tycho is just there to automate, and you can use any test runner to generate the reports. So, I'm not sure if you're talking about Jenkins or other CI tools, but suppose you want to use Tycho, you would use, say, a test runner like Gauge, and in Gauge, you write everything in Markdown, and for each piece of your text or say a scenario and your test step, you have a code in the background. So say select new person and there is a code, and you can then I mean, using Gauge you can then generate a test report. So this is a sample test report from Gauge, and it will show how many tests have passed or failed. Tycho itself doesn't produce any reports if that's your question, but you can use other test runners to generate report.
Mhm. Um, Other question, it is regarding the smart selectors. One of them is so can I use HTML IDs and so also, or or only smart selectors?
Okay, so yes, Tycho does give you the option to use XPath or CSS or any other ID that you want to select using the dollar API. And they have their documentation clearly mentioned, and you can actually use that to select any element if you want, apart from the smart
Mhm.
selectors. But the my observation from using this method is that it actually introduces flakiness. So try to automate what you can see using smart selectors, because that's much more easier. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sounds a good strategy. Have you faced difficulties with smart selectors?
Sometimes when the element is visible to the user, but the element is actually hidden in, it's not visible in the code. So that's the challenge sometimes I face, and you can actually overcome those scenarios using this dollar API. So I don't know what example to give because I've created so many scripts here and all are available on GitHub. But let me say Google Flights. So Google Flights, the challenge I've mentioned script still in progress. The main challenge I'm facing is that if I want to, so let's go to Google Flights. I'll be very quick. So if I go to Google Flights and I say London to Berlin, and so I can interact this part. But suppose I want to interact with this, sorry, price. Suppose I want to interact with this element. With smart selectors, it's getting very difficult specifically for this. So yes, there are some challenges, but I think you can overcome that using coding. So I can still identify this particular element, but I'm still not able to move it up and down. So that's one example where the element is visible to the user, but it's actually very difficult for the automation tool to interact and then automate that particular element.
Okay. And the last question, is there, if there are multiple similar elements, can you specify them explicitly?
Yes, you can specify them explicitly, and one of the examples is in the Internet Heroku app. So let me check. Tuck tuck inverts hovers. So this is a great example, I think. So you can specify each thing. They all look the same, but when you hover them, it gives a different output. So you can actually specify which one to actually highlight or hover. So you can do that smartly. So here in this case, I've mentioned user avatar to right of image or to right of to right of. So yeah, it's a bit uh, uh, like bit long, but you can actually uniquely identify each element.
Okay. Well, do we have other questions? Not in the chat.
Not yeah.
No. Okay. So, yes, again, Amit, thank you for this presentation. So, yes, second time. So, now I think it is time for a break. Yeah. So we will do a 15-minute break. Yeah. So there you can see there is of course, for the break, there is also the no mercy rule is still valid. Yeah.